الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So inshallah today we'll speak a little bit about the Udhiyah, the sacrifice that is specific to Eid al-Adha. And before we speak about it in terms of rules and regulations, one question that often comes up is, why is Adha named Adha? And why is Udhiyah, because of it being named Adha, named in such a way? So the scholars in Islam, they give different reasons, but perhaps the closest to the truth in Allah Azza wa Jalla most first is it is called Adha, sacrifice, because of the time that the sacrifice happens. So it happens during the time of Duha, that early time in the morning, after the Salatul Eid is completed, then that is when the sacrifice is done. So because of the timing that it's done, it's called Adha. And this time of Duha, it is from a little bit after Shuruq Shams up until the time of Dhuhr, or just before Salatul Dhuhr, by 10 minutes approximately. So this is the reason. And you might recognize the name for those of us that might not have Arabic as our mother tongue. In the Quran it is mentioned Surah Al-Duha, Wal-Duha, and again this is the same time that the Udhiyah is performed. So the beginning time of the sacrifice, as we just mentioned, is after the Eid Salah. So once the Eid Salah is done, completed, that is when the Sunnah of sacrificing happens. And it's been reported in historical books that the Prophet ﷺ, he sacrificed for 10 years in Medina. 10 years in Medina, the Prophet ﷺ would do this sacrifice, and he used to do it with kabshayn, and one of these animals he would do for his family and the people around him, sharing some of that meat with them. And the other one has been reported, it used to be for the Ummah. Whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would dedicate one of these animals as sacrifice on their behalf. So subhanallah, just that one point, it shows the compassion that the Prophet ﷺ had, that he did not only think about himself, but he thought about the people around him, and he thought of those that would come after. So this one moment, it shows the compassion, the consideration that the Prophet ﷺ had for his ummah. So now, when a person sacrifices, the time of sacrifice is after the khutbah and the salah. Once it is finished, that is when you do the sacrifice. And the time that it ends, it is until the last day of Ayyam Tashriq. These days, Eid is the first day, and then you have 3 more days. So this means that by some scholars' estimation, it can be up to the 13th, because Eid is on the 10th, the 13th of the Hijjah. And some they say no, you do not include the date of Eid, Yawm al-Nahr, and you keep that to the side, and then you count, so it becomes 14. So either 13th of the Hijjah or 14th of the Hijjah. There's difference of opinion between the scholars in Islam. And these days of Hajj, they have different names. Many people might not know the names, so just to go over the names so there's no confusion. On the 8th day, the day that the Hujjaj go to Mina, it is known as Yom Tarwiyah, and it comes from the time, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to bring the camels with the water from Mecca because there was no water in Mina. So they called this Yom Tarwiyah, that they would bring that water for the people of the Hujjaj in Mina. And then after that, the 9th day of the Hijjah, which is obviously Yom Arafah. It is the day where the Hujjaj stand on Arafah. And we've spoken about that before, that amongst the scholars there's difference of opinion. There are some of the scholars hold the opinion that Yom Arafah is not connected to a place, meaning that the day of Arafah can be different from one place to another place. As has been reported many times in history, in certain parts of the Muslim world, based on the moon sighting that they had, Yom Arafah was on a different date. And then you have Yom Nahr, the day of sacrifice. The day of sacrifice, which is Yom al-Hajj al-Akbar. And by some hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, this day of Yom Nahr, it is the best day of the entire year. The entire year, the best day is Yom Nahr. And again, this word Nahr, it is different from Dabh or Dabiha. And the scholars in Islam, they say because of the difference in terms of the animal, the Nahr, sacrificing in terms of Nahr, it is usually used for the Ibl, the camel, and the Nahr is actually a place on the throat, the lower part of the throat. It is known as the Nahr, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, where He says, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar. So this word is used in the Quran, and it is specifically sacrificing the camel. And when it comes to sacrificing, we know, according to the Sunnah, that you can sacrifice certain animals, has been mentioned, Bahimatul An'am, these cattle, which are the goat, the sheep, the cow, and the camel. Okay, these are the ones that have been mentioned specifically. Some people today, they try to come with new fatwa, and they say you can use as sacrifice a chicken or other animals, but the correct opinion is this is not permissible. That we follow the way that the Prophet ﷺ used to do. If you want to slaughter a chicken on the side, then you can do so, but it does not become from the Udhiyah that is known from the Prophet ﷺ. So once this animal is slaughtered, one of the benefits, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, ليشهدوا منافع لهم ويذكروا اسم الله في أيام معلومات على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَكُلُوا مِنْهَا وَأَطْعِمُوا الْبَائِسَ الْفَقِيرَ. That a part of that sacrifice is you eat from it and you feed those that are in need. In another verse, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions that you feed al-qani' wal-mu'tar. And the qani', the scholars in Islam, they say it is the one who is very, very poor, the faqir that does not have anything. And the mu'tar is the one that has just a little bit. He's a little bit better off in his state. So from that and from the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, we come to understand that once you have the meat of the sacrifice, the sunnah is that you eat some of it Some scholars, they say it is not a must. You don't have to eat from it. You can actually do the sacrifice somewhere else. Okay? This is what many people do, including myself, from time to time, doing the sacrifice somewhere else, perhaps back home or somewhere where it's very needed and the people are very hungry. You do that sacrifice, and it's not a must that you eat from the meat yourself, but it is better if it's possible. So a part of it you eat. Right? The second part is that you give it to the aqriba, the relatives and the jiran and the neighbors. You feed them from this meat. And then the final part that scholars in Islam mention is that you give some of it as sadaqah. You give some of it as sadaqah to Muslims around you. And this, it is important to mention that one of the roles that the masjid plays in this or any community is that it helps facilitate this type of process. So just to remind brothers, if you are in a situation where you have some meat that you want to give in sadaqah, you can take care of it yourself, or you can approach the masjid and you can ask if there are people in need, and there is always people in need. So, subhanAllah, the explanation of the word, just going back to what we mentioned before, فَكُلُوا مِنْهَا وَأَطْعِمُوا الْقَانِعَ وَالْمُعْتَرَ. Some of the scholars have said al-qani' is the faqir, the poor person who does not ask, the one that does not ask. Okay? And mu'tar is the faqir, the poor person who asks. Okay? So there is a difference here. Both of them Islamically are okay, but what Islam tries to get rid of is the excessive begging. Okay? When you ask too much, there's nothing haram if you find yourself in a difficult situation and you're truly in difficulty to ask people around you for help. This is permissible. But the excessive begging, for some people, Allahu musta'an, it's become almost like a business. You hear stories from people in some parts of the world. I just read a while ago about a lady. She used to beg every single day, and she passed away, and only when she passed away they found out that she had millions in her bank account. Right? So for some people it becomes a habit, right? And this is something that is Islamically not correct. There's a story that the scholars mention about the poor. There was once a poor man who was asking a rich man, and the rich man did not give the poor man. So the poor man, he became upset, and he said to the rich man, "Oh rich man, where are those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about in the Quran? Those people who Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصًا," that they prefer others over themselves even if they need it themselves. So this poor man is saying to the rich man, where are these people? And the rich man looked at the poor man and he said, those people, they died matu, they died along with the people الَّذِينَ لَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسَ إِلْحَافًا. Right? So it's a form of a joke where they say that these people that you're speaking about, they were good people, but they all passed away. In the same way that you're telling me that I should be giving you money, you shouldn't be begging for money. You should try to find out a way to find your sustenance yourself. So coming back to the Udhiyah, this one practice in Islam, it has many of the benefits, not just from a religious point of view, but also in terms of the community. It brings people together, and Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, لِيَشْهَدُوا مَنَافِعَ لَهُم, that it brings their attention to the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for them. So this eating and drinking, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he spoke about Ayyam al-Tashriq, these days, he said that it is Ayyam akl wa shurb. It is days of eating and drinking, right? It is days of happiness. So this Eid, it brings a lot of those positive things that a community needs. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would encourage people to perform this sacrifice, this udhiyah. It is not a must. Some people, they have the wrong perception. They think that you're only supposed to eat the udhiyah during the time of these days of Ayyam al-Tashriq. But that is not correct. The correct way of understanding it is the sacrifice can be during any of this time, from the day of Eid, Yawm al-Nahr, until the last day of Tashriq, 13th or 14th day. You can sacrifice during that time period. But the meat that you get from that, you can store it, you can eat it now, or you can eat it later. But you should, and this is an important point, is that you share it with others. That you don't keep that meat just for yourself. It is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to share it with others. So this udhiyah, it is again not a must for every person. It is only recommended. If you don't do it, there is no sin upon you, but you've lost out on a great reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even the udhiyah itself, some people, once the Eid passes, they say, oh, I already missed my chance. And that is not correct. You still have a chance. We're still in these days. I believe today is the 11th day, so you still have some time to do that sacrifice if you have not already done it. And with all good deeds, we are encouraged to try to do them as quick as possible and not to delay it. This is the sunnah of doing good deeds. So those are the most important aspects, and since a lot of people have been asking about the udhiyah, those are the questions, or rather the answers to some of the questions that people have been asking about. Well, inshallah, with that, we will conclude today's class.